Chapter 24. Which? "Uncle, I have discovered what girls are made for," said Rose, the day after the reconciliation of Archie and Prince. "Well, my dear, what is it?" asked Dr. Alec, who was planking the deck as he called his daily promenade up and down the hall. "To take care of boys," answered Rose, quite beaming with satisfaction as she spoke. "Phoebe laughed when I told her, and said she thought girls had better learn to take care of themselves first. But that is because she hasn't got 7 boy cousins, as I have. She is right, nevertheless, Rosie, and so are you, for the 2 things go together, and in helping 7 lads, you are unconsciously doing much to improve 1 lass," said Dr. Alec, stopping to nod and smile at the bright-faced figure resting on the old bamboo chair after a lively game of battledore and shuttlecock, in place of a run which a storm prevented. "Am I? I'm glad of that, but really, uncle, I do feel as if I must take care of the boys, for they come to me in all sort of troubles and ask advice, and I like it so much. Only I don't always know what to do, and I am going to consult you privately and then surprise them with my wisdom." "All right, my dear, what is the first worry? I see you have something in your little mind, so come and tell uncle." Rose put her arms in his and, pacing to and fro, told him all about Charlie, asking what she could do to keep him straight and be a real sister to him. "Could you make up your mind to go and stay with Aunt Clara a month?" asked the doctor when she ended. "Yes, sir, but I shouldn't like it. Do you really want me to go?" "The best cure for Charlie is a daily dose of rose water, or rose and water. Will you go and see that he takes it?" laughed Dr. Alec. "You mean that if I'm there and try to make it pleasant, he will stay at home and keep out of mischief?" "Exactly." "But could I make it pleasant? He would want the boys." "No danger, but he'd have the boys, for they swarm after you like bees after their queen. Haven't you seen that? Aunt Glen often says they never used to be here half so much before I came, but I never thought I made the difference. It seems so natural to have them around. Little Modesty doesn't know what a magnet she is, but she will find out some day," and the doctor softly stroked cheek that had grown rosy with pleasure at the thought of being so much loved. "Now you see, if I move the magnet to Aunt Clara's, the lads will go there as sure, and Charlie will be so happy at home. He won't care for the mischievous mates of his, I hope," added the doctor, well knowing how hard it was to wean a 17-year-old boy from his first taste of what is called seeing life, which, alas, often ends in seeing death. "I will go, uncle, right away. Aunt Clara is always asking me, and will be glad to get me. I shall have to dress and dine late and see lots of company and be very fashionable, but I will try not to let it hurt me, and if I get in a puzzle or worried about anything, I can run to you," answered Rose. It was so decided, and without saying much about the real reason for this visit, Rose was transplanted to Aunt Clara's, feeling that she had a work to do, and very eager to do it well. Dr. Alec was right about the bees, for the boys did follow their queen, and astonished Miss Clara by their sudden assiduity in making calls, dropping into dinner, and getting up evening frolics. Charlie was a devoted host, and tried to show his gratitude by being very kind to his little sister, for he guessed why she came, and his heart was touched. Rose often longed to be back in the old house, with the simpler pleasures and more useful duties of the life there, but having made up her mind, in spite of Phoebe, that girls were made to take care of boys, her motherly little soul found much to enjoy in the new task she had undertaken. It was a pretty sight to see the one earnest, sweet-faced girl among the flock of tall lads, trying to understand, to help and please them with a patient affection that worked many small miracles unperceived. Slang, rough manners, and careless habits were banished, or bettered by the presence of a little gentle woman, and all the manly virtues cropping up were encouraged by the hearty admiration bestowed upon them by one whose good opinion all valued more than they confessed. while Rose tried to imitate the good qualities she praised in them, to put away her girlish vanities and fears, to be strong and just and frank, and brave as well as modest, kind and beautiful. This trial worked so well that when the month was over, Mag and Steve demanded a visit in their turn, and Rose went, feeling that she would like to hear grim Aunt Jane say, as Aunt Clara did at parting, "I wish I could keep you all my life, dear." After Mag and Steve had their turn, Archie and company bore her away for some weeks, and with them she was so happy. She felt as if she would like to stay forever, if she could have Uncle Alec also. Of course, Aunt Myra could not be neglected, and with secret despair, Rose went to the mausoleum, as the boys called her gloomy abode. Fortunately, she was very near home, and Dr. Alec dropped in so often that her visit was far less dismal than she expected. Between them, they actually made Aunt Myra laugh heartily more than once, and Rose did her so much good by letting in the sunshine, singing about the silent house, cooking wholesome messes, and amusing the old lady with funny little lectures on physiology, that she forgot to take her pills and gave up Mom's elixir. Because she slept so well after the long walks and drives, she was beguiled into taking that she needed no narcotic. Hello friends, it is Niina from the Little Woman podcast. Just to let you all know that the Little Woman podcast episode transcripts are now available as books. You can find them as paperbacks and ebooks. They are wonderful reading for all the fans of Louisa May Alcott. You can find all the links from the description. And now, back to the show. So the winter flew rapidly away, and it was May before Rose was fairly settled again at home. They called her the little monthly Rose, because she had spent a month with each of the aunts and left such a pleasant memories of bloom and fragrance behind her that all wanted the family flower back again. Dr. Alec rejoiced greatly over his recovered treasure, but as the time drew near, when his year of experiment ended, he had many a secret fear that Rose might like to make her home for the next 12 months with Aunt Jessie, or even Aunt Clara, for Charlie's sake. He said nothing, but waited with much anxiety for the day when the matter should be decided, and while he waited, he did his best to finish as far as possible the task he had begun so well. Rose was very happy now, being out nearly all day, enjoying the beautiful awakening of the world, for spring came bright and early, as if anxious to do its part. The old horse chestnuts budded round her windows. Green things sprung up like magic in the garden. Under her hands, hardy flowers bloomed as fast as they could. The birds sang blithely overhead, and every day a chorus of pleasant voices cried, "Good morning, cousin. Isn't it jolly weather?" No one remembered the date of the eventful conversation which resulted in the doctor's experiment. No one but himself, at least. So when the aunts were invited to tea on one Saturday, they came quite unsuspiciously, and were all sitting together having a social chat, when Brother Alec entered with 2 photographs in his hand. "Do you remember that?" he said, showing one to Aunt Clara, who happened to be nearest. "Yes, indeed. It is very like her when she came. Quite her sad, unchildlike expression, and thin little face with the dark big eyes." The picture was passed around, and all agreed that it was very like Rose a year ago. This point being settled, the doctor showed the second picture, which was received with great approbation and pronounced as a charming likeness. It certainly was, and a striking contrast to the first one, for it was a blooming, smiling face full of girlish spirit and health, with no sign of melancholy, though the soft eyes were thoughtful, and the lines about the lips betrayed a sensitive nature. Dr. Alec set both photographs on the chimney-piece, and falling back a step or 2, surveyed them with infinite satisfaction for several minutes, saying briefly, as he pointed to the 2 faces, "Time is up. How do you think my experiment has succeeded, ladies?" "Bless me, so it is!" cried Aunt Plenty, dropping a stitch in her surprise. "Beautifully, dear," answered Aunt Peace, smiling entire approval. She certainly has improved, but appearances are deceitful, and she has no constitution to build upon, croaked Aunt Myra. I am willing to allow that, as far as mere health goes. The experiment is a success, graciously observed Aunt Jane, unable to forget Rose's kindness to her Mac. So am I, and I go further, for I really do believe Alec has done wonders for the child. She will be a beauty in 2 or 3 years, added Aunt Clara, feeling that she could say nothing better than that. I always knew he would succeed, and I am so glad you all allow it, for he deserves more credit than you know, and more praise than he will ever get, cried Aunt Jessie, clapping her hands with an enthusiasm that caused Jamie's little red stocking to wave like a triumphal banner in the air. Dr. Alec made them a splendid bow, looking much gratified, and then he said soberly, "Thank you. Now the question is, shall I go on? For this is only the beginning. None of you know the hindrances I've had, the mistakes I have made, the study I have given, the case and the anxiety I have often felt. Sister Myra is right in one thing. Rose is a delicate creature, quick to flourish in sunshine, and as quick to droop without it. She has no special weakness, but inherits her mother's sensitive nature, and needs the wisest, tenderest care to keep a very ardent little soul from wearing out a finely organized little body. I think I have found the right treatment, and with you to help me, I believe we may build up a lovely and a noble woman who will be a pride and comfort to us all." There Dr. Alec stopped to get his breath, for he had spoken very earnestly, and his voice got a little husky over the last words. A gentle murmur from the aunts seemed to encourage him, and he went on with an engaging smile, for the good man was slyly trying to win all the ladies to vote for him when the time came. Now I don't wish to be selfish or arbitrary, because I am her guardian, and I shall leave Rose free to choose for herself. We all want her, and if she likes to make her home with any of you rather than with me, she shall do so. In fact, I encouraged her visits last winter, that she might see what we can all offer her, and judged where she will be happiest. Is not that the fairest way? Will you agree to abide by her choice as I do?" "Yes, we will," said all the aunts in quite a flutter of excitement at the prospect of having Rose for a whole year. "Good. She will be here directly, and then we will settle the question for another year. A most important year, mind you, for she has got a good start, and will blossom rapidly now if all goes well with her. So I beg of you, don't undo my work, but deal very wisely and gently with my little girl, for if any harm come to her, I think it would break my heart." As he spoke, Dr. Alec turned his back abruptly and affected to be examining the pictures again, but the aunts understood how dear the child was, the solitary man who had loved her mother years ago, and who now found his happiness in cherishing the little Rose who was so like her. The good ladies nodded and sighed, and telegraphed to one another that none of them would complain if not chosen, or ever try to rob Brother Alec of his heart's delight. Just then a pleasant sound of happy voices came up from the garden, and smiles broke out on all serious faces. Dr. Alec turned at once, saying as he threw back his head, "There she is, now for it." The cousins had been a-maying, and soon came flocking in laden with the spoils. "Here is our bonny Scotch Rose, with all her thorns about her," said Dr. Alec, surveying her with unusual pride and tenderness, as she went to show Aunt Peace her basket full of early flowers, fresh leaves, and curious lichens. "Leave your clutter in the hall, boys, and sit quietly down, if you choose to stop here, for we are busy," said Aunt Plenty, shaking her finger at the turbulent clan, who were bubbling over with the jollity born of spring, sunshine, and healthy exercise. "Of course we choose to stay. Wouldn't miss our Saturday high tea for anything," said the chief, as he restored order among his men with a nod, a word, and an occasional shake. "What is up, a court-martial?" asked Charlie, looking at the assembled ladies with affected awe and real curiosity, for their faces betrayed that some interesting business was afloat. Dr. Alec explained in a few words, which he made as brief and calm as he could, but the effect was exciting nevertheless, for each of the lads began at once to bribe, entice and wheedle our cousin to choose his home. You really ought to come to us for mother's sake, as a relish, you know, for she must be perfectly satiated with boys, began Archie, using the strongest argument he could think of at the moment. Oh, do! We'll never slam or bounce at you, or call you a afraid cat if you only will, besought Geordie and Will, distorting their countenances in the attempt to smile with overpowering sweetness. And I will always wash my hands before I touch you, and you shall be my dolly, 'cause Pokey's gone away, and I love you hard, cried Jamie, clinging to her with his chubby face full of affection. Brothers and sisters ought to live together, especially when the brother needs someone to make home pleasant for him, added Charlie, with a wheedlesome tone and look that Rose always found so difficult to resist. You had her longest, and it is our turn now. Mac needs her more than you do, Prince, for she's the light of his eyes, he says. Come, Rose, choose us, and I'll never use the musky pomade you hate again, as long as I live, said Steve with his most killing air, as he offered this noble sacrifice. Mac peered wistfully over his goggles, saying in an unusually wide-awake and earnest way, Do, cousin. Then we can study chemistry together. My experiments don't blow up very often now, and the gases aren't all bad when you get used to them. Rose, meantime, had stood quite still, with the flowers dropping from her hands, as her eyes went from one eager face to another, while smiles rippled over her own at the various enticements offered her. During the laugh that followed Mac's handsome proposition, she looked at her uncle, whose eyes were fixed on her with an expression of love and longing that went to her heart. Oh yes, she thought, he wants me most. I have often longed to give him something that he wished for very much, and now I can. So when, at a sudden gesture from Aunt Peace, silence fell, Rose said slowly, with a pretty colour in her cheeks, and a beseeching look about the room, as if asking pardon of the boys, It is very hard to choose when everybody is so fond of me. Therefore I think I'd better go to the one who seems to need me the most. Now, dear, the one you love the best and will be happiest with, said Dr. Alec quickly, as a doleful sniff from Aunt Myra and a murmur of My Sainted Caroline made Rose pause. Take time, cousin. Don't be in a hurry to make up your mind, and remember, Coatlin's your friend, added Charlie, hopeful still. I don't want any time. I know who I love best, who I am happiest with, and I choose Uncle. Will he have me? Cried Rose, in a tone that produced a sympathetic thrill among the hearers. It was so full of tender confidence and love. If she really had any doubt, the look in Dr. Alec's face banished it, as he opened wide his arms, and she ran into them, feeling that home was there. No one spoke for a minute, but there were signs of emotion among the aunts, which warned the boys to bestir themselves before the waterworks began to play. So they took hands and began to prance about uncle and niece, singing with a sudden inspiration the nursery rhyme, Ring around a rosy. Of course that put an end to all sentiment, and Rose emerged laughing from Dr. Alec's bosom, with the mark of a waistcoat button nicely imprinted on her left cheek. He saw it and said with a merry kiss that half affected it, And I have set my mark on her, so no one can steal her away. That tickled the boys, and they sat up and shouted out, Uncle had a little lamb. But Rose hushed the noise by slipping into the circle and making them dance prettily like lads and lasses round a maypole, while Phoebe, coming in with fresh water for the flowers, began to twitter, chirp and coo, as if all the birds of the air had come to join in the spring revel of the 8 cousins. The end.